departments and to provide systems and also support the departments need in order to successfully achieve their missions. They're their people. When you look at what we do as an organization, we're a service organization, and I strongly believe that our people are by far the most valuable asset that we have. If I were to look at the areas where there's connectivity between our mission and HR and the board's priorities, it's any area in your priorities where you need to rely on our ability to attract, retain, and engage our workforce. So for me, I would look at things like the efficient use of resources, safe community, and proactive and innovative government. I think all of those are impacted by the HR mission statement for that reason. Next, we'll move into a brief overview of the HR key metrics. Oh, sorry. First, I'll do an overview of the team, and then we'll talk about key metrics. We do have, I think, all of our HR leadership team here today, so I would ask you guys to raise your hand or something so folks know who you are. Michelle Balcom is here. Michelle oversees our Retirement Services Department. Retirement Services administers the county's pension, 457 plan, and retiree health care plan. Holly Hartley is here today. Holly oversees compensation, benefits, and HR information systems. Stephanie Hernandez oversees employment, recruitment. Darius Quinn oversees diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Bob Chovanec is our labor attorney. Not here today is Tamber Bustance, who provides L&D services for us. Overall, we have a staff of 16 people. Okay, so the first metric that we track is turnover during the first year of employment. Our goal is to have a turnover rate during that first year of employment that's less than 15%. And we're still not finished with the measurement period for 2018, and you can see that it's trending at 17%. So we are above what our goal is for turnover in the first year of employment. This is going to be an area of focus for us as we look at the future. We're going to dig into this and make sure that we're doing a good job onboarding people. What we discovered, based on the information that we do have, is in that first year of employment, people aren't necessarily as committed to their employment with the county because they haven't been here that long, and they're getting all kinds of calls from other employers. We're in a war for talent. We're in a hyper-competitive labor market. And the more we can do to make that first year a good experience and to make sure people feel welcome here at the county and make sure that they feel like they're being acclimated to their job and given the support they need to be successful, I think that that's an investment that's well worth our time in this labor market. Okay, the second metric that we track is the number of employment offers that are rejected. We've only been tracking this for 2 years, and we established a goal of fewer than 4, and that was largely based on our experience in 2017, which was the first time that we started to really look at this when we had 2 people reject an offer. In 2018, year to date, we're at 15, so we have seen that number jump substantially. To give you some frame of reference, we make over 200 offers of employment annually. So the rate of rejection for 2017 would have been around 1%, and the rate of rejection for 2018 around 7%. When we looked at kind of who was rejecting the offers, there really wasn't any pattern. It was all across county departments, all across county jobs. I really believe that this is just a factor of people when they're looking at employment with the county, they're also interviewing for other jobs with other employers. Sometimes we're their best offer, sometimes we're not. The next metric is to partner with at least one county department to develop and deploy a joint branding and recruitment strategy, wordy metric. Basically what we're trying to do with this is identify proactively unique challenges with recruitment and make sure that we're doing the legwork up front to have a good plan in place. And I wanted to highlight the recruitment of the medical director at the health department as a good example of us doing this well. What we did when we realized that Dr. Hall was going to retire is we sat down with the hiring manager at the health department and we identified a strategy. And we talked about the different things we could do and where we would experience the highest probability of success with this recruitment. For this position, we need somebody with a medical degree and a public health master's degree or the willingness to obtain one. So it's a very unique skill set. And we decided that our best bet would be through networking. So Dr. Hall and others at the health department worked very hard with networking, and that's ultimately how we successfully found this candidate. So I thought it was a good example of making sure that we had a targeted strategy to make sure that we maximize our success of finding the right person for the job. Okay. The next metric here is related to efficiency. So what we shoot for, this is a metric that was produced by Society of Human Resources Management. Typically for large employers, the average staffing in HR to positions in the company, that ratio is 1.33 HR staff to 100 positions. Even though we're well below that, and we have been since we started tracking this metric, I wanted to reinforce that we're not just resting on our laurels here. We have, in the last 10 years, eliminated 5 positions out of HR. So in 2008, we had 21 people. We now have 16. So we have a net reduction of 5. In addition to that, over the 5 years that I've been here, we have taken 2 full-time positions and converted them to part-time status. So we do continue to look at ways to be as efficient and as lean as possible in HR. Process improvements are a key lever that allow us to do that. We have a goal to execute at least 2 process improvements annually in HR, and I wanted to talk about some of the process improvements that we have executed so far this year. Some of these are more interesting or less interesting, but I mean they really do add value in terms of our ability to be lean and to provide a maximum level of service with not very many resources. Okay. One of the things that we did was we changed the duration of our collective bargaining agreements from a 5-year term, or from a 3-year term to a 5-year term. So we're spending a lot less time preparing for and sitting in contract negotiations. It's going to greatly improve our efficiency level. The second thing that we did is we implemented a new employee self-service system in January that allows employees to view and to change information that otherwise HR would have had to provide to them or type into our system if they wanted to make changes. Third thing that we did was we implemented a more user-friendly mechanism for departments to notify us of changes to the reporting structure. Another thing that we did that I personally really like is we previously had 2 separate vendors administering short-term disability benefits and then FMLA, and they run together. So there were a lot of inefficiencies. Now we have all of that under the same vendor. So it's easier for employees, managers, and HR when we administer those benefits. We also started to use electronic media as opposed to doing the roadshow countywide and doing face-to-face meetings for things that lend themselves well to that type of thing. I'll give you a couple of examples over the course of the last year. We had a webinar for all of our county managers to let them know what changes we made to our policy manual. And previously we would have had several meetings and people had to come here and pay for parking and all of that. So it was a lot better way to convey that information. We also did videos this year to let employees know what changes were coming up with their health and welfare benefits for open enrollment. So we're looking at opportunities to use technology to make things more efficient where we can. We also, the last thing I wanted to highlight was we made some changes. We hired an administrative support person in retirement services, and we routed all of the routine correspondence, just calls from customers and that type of things, to that person, and that frees up Michelle Balcom and Tara Beatty to work on more higher level things. So those are just some of the things that we did in terms of process improvement in HR over the past year. Next metric is voluntary turnover. Our goal is to have less than 5%, and we are seeing some pressure on this as well. Year to date in 2018, we're at, what, 4.76%, I think, so we're bumping up against the 5%, but as far as we are into the year, I think we'll probably squeeze in under it, but we are seeing that, that the pressures of the economy are causing that to rise up a little bit as well. Okay. The next goal we have is to make sure pay increases are aligned with what we use is a statistic published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a measure for the wage and salary growth in state and local units of government. You can see we've been tracking this since 2015, and we pretty much track with what other local and state units of government are offering in terms of wage increases. So we're pretty consistent there. And then the last metric we have is funding in the pension plan. This one is important because, I mean, this is, I think, a huge benefit that we offer for retirees, and we want to make sure if we're offering this benefit that we're safeguarding it, and that when people do reach retirement age that they can count on it and they feel like we're doing the right things to make sure that it's sustainable. So we want to make sure the pension is at least 90% funded, and it has been, continues to be, and will be, I'm sure, when we have the actuarial report for 2018. So that's the end of the key metrics. I'm going to move into significant accomplishments. The first accomplishment I wanted to highlight is we have 10 unions. One will go away just due to attrition. The jobs were replaced by technology, so we did do 9 contract negotiations over the course of last year and this year. All but one were ratified timely and due to an affirmative vote of the employees. So we feel like that's a great success. The one that was not ratified timely, that was Fraternal Order of Police. We did have a new union take control over the membership of the employees in that group right at the time when we sat down for negotiations, and that's the union where we did have a 312 arbitrators decision that ultimately decided how things ended up. The next thing I wanted to highlight is we engaged in 2017 and 18 in a process to do a major update in our policy and procedures manual. This is the first time we've done it in its entirety since 2010, so a lot of things were new and different. I want to highlight a couple of things about the process. One thing I'm proud of is the impact the departments had on the policy and procedures manual. We listened to them, we took their input into account, and we did create flexibility for departments in several areas. We also did a better job explaining certain things, how certain systems and functions work in HR in the policy and procedures manual. And we did a better job making sure that the tone in terms of how that policy and procedures manual was written is reflective of the values that we have here at Kent County. So, the next achievement is we went live with the CDI system. A long time coming. It was over a 3-year project. So we went live with that in January of 2018. And I did want to thank Holly Hartley on our team for putting in countless hours over those years to make sure that that system was properly configured and up and running. Also, I wanted to thank Shanna Scott, who's not here because she kind of helped us to get over the finish line when it got closer to January. The next accomplishment is we trained over 1,000 employees in something called CQ, which is short for Cultural Intelligence. CQ is one of the things that came out of our 5-year plan a couple years ago for diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a tool that helps employees to identify a self-directed development plan that is appropriate to them, that helps them to improve their ability to work in a multicultural team or to provide support to multicultural clientele. So far, we've trained over 1,000 employees in CQ. That effort will continue into the next year until all county employees have received an introduction to this tool. We also held our first career fair in partnership with the Urban League over the past year. And several county departments attended, and we're excited to partner with them in the future and continue with that event. As you know, we conducted an MPP wage study to make sure that MPP pay rates are consistent with market and continue to be competitive, and also to make sure that our structure eliminates the potential for wage compression in the future. And then the last accomplishment I wanted to highlight is we made some changes to the MPP performance review process over the course of the last year. The intent is to make it more conversational and more informal and also more frequent. So people sit down once a quarter and they have a conversation with their manager about how things are going. There's a much heavier emphasis on development planning, professional development, and on achieving the goals that you want to achieve over the course of the performance period. So it's much more forward-looking as opposed to backward-looking in terms of its construction. So it's intended to support employee development and the achievement of the goals that are most critical for us to get done here at the county. We also, in the past year, offered a coaching workshop to help leaders to have tools to be able to have more effective performance and developmentally oriented conversations with their employees. Look ahead. Probably no surprise given the continued kind of competitiveness of the labor market that we're going to look at recruitment and retention as ongoing areas of focus. We already talked about onboarding and that we're going to focus on that, making sure that people have a really good first year here at the county. In 2020, we're going to offer a health savings account type health plan. So in 2019, we're going to lay the groundwork for that in terms of plan design and employee communications. We'll continue to implement the elements of that 5-year plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're heading into the 3rd year of the plan, and the parts that really impact HR the most are the continued delivery of that CQ training and also delivery of a new training course that will help managers to identify and eliminate sources of bias in the hiring process. We're going to enhance our wellness programming. We're going to reconvene a wellness committee, and we're going to put some structure around wellness programming over the course of the next year. We're going to work in HR to instill the core values into our systems. So we're going to look at all of our systems throughout the employee life cycle, and we'll look at what do we need to do to make sure that those systems are supportive of instilling the core values into our culture and into our processes. We also are going to provide training, probably over the course of the next several years, to all of our employees to make sure they understand what the core values are, how those are reflected in their day-to-day behaviors and decisions. And then last, we'll continue with an ongoing focus on leadership development, particularly looking at helping leaders to work with greater levels of emotional intelligence, and also to make sure that leaders are equipped with the tools that they need to have caring but honest conversations about performance.
All right, that was a great presentation. Thank you, Amy. Do we have questions today? Commissioner Vonk.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions. First, that turnover the first year, is that mainly because of wages, or do we have some other outages or things that we should be looking at? And then the second question, which you touched on, the diversity issue, are we maintaining our goals on diversity and meeting those goals throughout the employment?
Okay, so the first question about turnover in the first year, it's both. There have been some issues where kind of in pockets of the county where people haven't necessarily felt that their onboarding experience was good. Maybe they weren't properly trained to do their job, or they didn't feel welcome in their department. So we've been reaching out to departments where that happens. Occasionally we'll find that our hiring process is not resulting in people who are a good fit for the role. So we talk about what do we need to do about that. So there are some things internally that we can and have addressed as we find that they're occurring. Also, a lot of it is just people, when they were interviewing with us, they were interviewing with other organizations, and maybe 2 months later, a month later, somebody else comes with a better offer as they were participating in that process. So we have lost some people just because of the competitiveness of the labor market as well. As it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, Darius provided me with the metrics based on our last read. And we actually have made some progress. What we try to do is make sure that the demographics of the population as it relates to particularly race are consistent with the demographics of our employee population. And since I've been here, we've been pretty good in terms of the African American population, where it's pretty much on target. It continues to be. But with the Latino population, when I started here, we had a gap of about, I think, 5%, where our employee demographics were, off by about 5%. So we have been taking initiative to improve that and close that gap. And now it's like 3.7% or something. So we are making progress on kind of making sure we have a better representation of Latino employees to be consistent with the community that we serve.
And just one other thing, what about the veterans metric as part of our population?
I will have to get that for you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you. First, just commend adding the health savings account. I know personally that can be a really great option for employees and their families. And then my question is with the self-serve HR system. I know, one, that's a real advantage and a real efficiency gain for the HR department. It also exposes a little bit of a risk in the sense of, and so my question is, have you thought through, like, if an employee gets their system hacked and say their payroll routed to a different bank account or something, do we have in place a process to handle that and know where the cost liability falls?
That would probably be a better question for fiscal services because they handle the payroll side of things. I do know that's hosted in the cloud and that there is adequate security, and I know that we looked quite a bit into that because it's the same, system that hosts our financial, our financial system as well. But I could check with Steve Duarte and get you a better answer to that question.
Sure, thank you.
Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you, Chair. Amy, looking at your enhanced employee wellness programming that you're looking ahead to, the current wellness program, is that something that's optional, or, and if so, how many participants do you have, and is enhancing it trying to increase the participation in that program?
Yep, good question. We had a more concerted effort around employee wellness that kind of devolved around the recession as resources became more scarce. But we did maintain some key incentives that I think have been effective. One of them is for people who are either in a smoking cessation program or are non-smokers, they do save 2.5% on their health care costs. And also for people who go get a physical exam, they save 2.5% on their health care costs. So the combined savings is around 5%. Just recently, we received a report from Aon, which is our insurance broker, that Paretoed out all of our major health care costs. Our highest health care cost is people getting their physical exam and preventative care. So I really see that as being an investment,
Right.
Proactive investment in heading off other issues down the road. So I think that's a wonderfully successful incentive that we have had in place for a while and will continue to keep. Another incentive that we have is for people who have chronic medical conditions like hypertension or diabetes. For people with hypertension, I believe we provide them with free medication. And for people with diabetes, you can only get that at the brand name rate, so we offer it to them at the generic rate. So we are doing some things to incentivize people with manageable chronic medical conditions to make that easier for them and to remove some of those barriers. With the Wellness Committee, yeah, I mean, these are incentives that have been in place for a long time, and we know that we can and should be doing more. So we're going to get together a group and decide what that should look like.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Talon.
Chair, morning, Amy.
Morning.
Really appreciate the cultural intelligence training, and you mentioned that there were 1,000 employees, and I apologize, I forget how many employees we have in Kent County, so.
Just over 1,600.
1,600, so we're over halfway. I was fortunate to be able to participate in one of the initial trainings, I think. Seems like it might have been 2 years ago or quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And I don't remember seeing anything as a commissioner since then about it. It seems like maybe there were a couple hundred that participated in that training. I'm sure all of my colleagues and I would like to continue along that road of also getting that training. So I don't know if we've been missed, or do you know whether we have been getting notification of those trainings?
That's an excellent point. I'd be happy to work with administration and make sure that everybody on the commission gets an invite so you have kind of a good, solid understanding of what that involves and how that tool can be helpful.
I think a lot of us would like to, so thank you.
Great.
Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Amy. You indicated that you are experiencing we are experiencing about a 17% loss of employees in that first year. I know that costs us money, but have you done any analysis on what it costs us to hire someone, have them work for us for less than a year, and then have them leave and have to go back and start all over again? What's the cost of not being able to retain at 5%?
The higher the level of employee, the higher investment and the higher the costs related to turnover. But I mean, generally speaking, kind of an easy round number is take about half of the salary costs for all of those people, and that's the cost associated with turnover. So it's high.
Yeah. The other question I had is, that 17% is in that first year. Do we have retention issues in years 2, 3, 4, 5, or at any other point in seniority?
Yeah, that's a good question. We only track it kind of based on the overall metric where we're close to 5% in the first year. So I'm not sure
There's not
about
a bump
2, 3,
year.
and 4.
Like
Yeah.
in my profession, year 5 is where everybody looks, but we don't have that experience, or you don't notice that?
For us, we have a wonderful, valuable tool in our defined benefit pension plan. People become vested after 5 years, so I think our turnover overall would be much, much higher if we didn't have that as an incentive for
Okay.
people to stick around.
That helps us quantify the value of that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Amy today? I just have one question, comment. Just, you had mentioned, I think it's in here somewhere about internships. And I would really, I don't know how robust that program is, but I would really encourage us to kind of look at that in terms of our recruitment process. I came up through an internship program I was very fortunate to have at Western, and I just think it's so valuable. And sometimes it's a labor of love, I understand, but if there's something we could do to kind of enhance that and make that, maybe collaborate with so many universities here and higher education communities here. So if we could do that and kind of enhance that, it might be a great way to enhance our recruitment process. So thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. I don't know if you want to stay for the next couple of items. All right, we're going to move on to item 4, Human Resources Labor Agreement with the County Deputy Sheriff's Association. Wayman?
Yeah, this is a request to the commission to approve a 5-year labor agreement for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2023 between the county and the Kent County KCDSA, representing the sheriff officers, corrections, and scientific support unit staff. The negotiating committee recommends approval of a 5-year labor agreement with the KCDSA covering 242 employees. Following is a summary of the major financial elements of the proposed new agreement. Wages will increase 2.5% annually in 2019, 2020, 21, and 2% in 2022 and 23. Either party may reopen the agreement during 2021 for negotiation of 2022 and 23 wages. The maximum retiree health care stipend will increase to $400 to employees who will retire in 2019 or after. The total 5-year increase to salary and benefit costs is estimated to be $7.3 million.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Korndike. Do I have a second?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Vonk. Any questions or comments on this? Commissioner Steck?
Yeah, thank you. Amy, the number that's reported in the total cost, that's $7,304,825 over the next 5 years, assuming the wage increases at the 2% and there's not a change at year 3, right?
Right.
That also includes the cost of the additional benefit structures that we're talking about. Does it include increased contributions to the pension as well?
No, it does not. For costs, benefit type costs that we can easily predict and calculate going out, we do include those, but if we can't easily calculate the costs for the benefit changes, then we don't.
Okay. But it would be fair to say that you would anticipate that as you increase the wages, there will be a slight incremental increase in the contribution to the pensions as well.
No, and I stand corrected. The formula that we use to calculate the total cost, it does take into account tax and pension and all of those other kind of those expenses that coincide with the wages. So
what
yeah.
we can look at is this is sort of our best guess on our best calculation, not a guess, on the cost to the county for these employees. And I think the other contracts we're going to deal with pretty soon here are pretty much the same. And the total is 1,000 employees covered by these 5 contracts. And if I add the numbers up, that's about $24.3 million over the next 5 years of additional cost. That's additional cost to the county for us to have the same number of employees providing these services, which, again, my quick math is that's about $4.8 million a year. For 1,000 employees, that's about $4,800 per employee per year that we are increasing in our costs. And when I break it down, it seems like a lot of money per employee, because that's if an average employee in this county is about $52,000, $53,000. plus benefits. It just seems like a lot, but I understand we're in a very competitive, difficult market. And most of this cost seems to be in the benefit structures.
Actually,
Because 2.5% is really kind of on the lower end.
It's a great question. Almost all of the cost is in the wage increases, and the way that we calculate it is we assume two different scenarios. Scenario A is 0% wage increase for 5 years. Scenario B is the wage increases over the 5 years that we negotiated. So if you were to look at, for instance, the wage increase that is offered in the first year, it continues through the second year, third year, fourth year, and fifth year. And so that effect of the increases continuing
They're
and building
compounding,
on one
yeah.
another, that's really what makes the cost so high. It's the compounding effect over the 5-year period. It's almost entirely wages. I mean, the vast
Well,
majority of it.
and again, I'm not, I guess I'm not being critical, because I think 2.5, as I look at what's happening around the state, is really kind of a very solid number to have negotiated. But at the same time, we're going to have to spend a fair amount of money out of our revenues, which I don't think are growing at this rate, over the course of the next 5 years in order to maintain our work base.
One thing that gives me some sense of confidence with what we're coming to you guys with is the partnership that Wayman, Steve, and I had when we identified what we think is affordable in terms of making sure that we can come to the board with a recommended balanced budget over the next 5 years. So I feel good that I have Steve's support, that this is affordable over the 5-year term.
And I support it, and I'll vote for this because I think it's a good contract, or good contracts. But it underscores for me the significance of how it costs us to stay competitive. And when it comes time to talk about our revenue side of it, we need to remember this cost.
All right, any other questions for Amy? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Amy, it's been a little while. Can you remind me of the kind of the issues around the stipend for employee health care after retirement? That's kind of an unusual thing, and wondering how we have that here, why we continue it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could
Well,
just talk around that a little bit.
Yeah, some very smart person prior to me decided that making sure that we had some sort of bounds in terms of a kind of a flat dollar amount max was a prudent way to go versus offering to pay for a percentage of the healthcare costs. And I credit that, combined with, Wayman and Steve being in the board, being very aggressive in making sure that we fund that for the favorable position we're in terms of our overall liability for that benefit and our funded status. We're much, much better positioned than our peers. This is a benefit that's commonly offered in some way, shape, or form in local government. A lot of local units of government have decided to negotiate with their union partners to, instead of having a defined benefit type of arrangement, which really is what we have, to have instead a defined contribution arrangement, where they have some sort of health savings account. It's a different form than the one that we're talking about implementing in 2020, that is a savings mechanism for retiree health care. We did evaluate that, and we really think in terms of cost effectiveness and the benefit to employees, we're better off with the system that we have, even though it is somewhat unique.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy? All right, seeing none, we do have a motion and a second, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 5, labor agreement, Teamsters State, County, and Municipal Workers.
Yes, this is a request to approve a 5-year labor agreement for the period of January 1, 2019 to December 31, 2023 between the county and the Teamsters Local 214 representing public health nurses employed at the Kent County Health Department. The negotiating committee recommends approval of a 5-year labor agreement with the Teamsters Local 214 covering 51 employees. Following is a summary of the major financial elements of the proposed agreement. Wages will increase 2.5% annually, 2019, 2021, and 2% in 2022 and 23. Either party may reopen the agreement during 2021 for negotiating of 2022 and 23 wages. The maximum retiree health care stipend will increase to $400 for employees who retire in 2019 or after. The total 5-year increase to salary and benefits costs is estimated to be $1.3 million.
Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner
Support.
Vaughn, support by Commissioner Korndike. Questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 6, labor agreement, technical professional and office worker association.
This request is to approve a 5-year labor agreement for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2023 between the county and the TPOAM, representing the Kent County employees of the 17th Judicial Circuit Court, the Probate Court, the 63rd District Court, and the County Clerk's Courts Division. The negotiating committee recommends approval of a 5-year labor agreement with TPOAM covering 339 employees. Following is a summary of the major components of the financial elements of the proposed new agreement. Wages will increase 2.5% annually 2019, 2021, and 2% in 2022 and 2023. Either party may reopen the agreement during 21 for negotiation of 22 wages and 23 wages. The maximum retiree health care stipend will increase $400 to employees who retire in 2019 or after, and the total 5-year agreement increase to salary and benefits cost is estimated to be $7.6 million.
Do I have a motion?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Korndike, support by Commissioner Vaughn. Any questions or comments on this issue? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Amy, when I compare this agreement with the first one that we did, almost everything is identical in them, including only a $300,000 difference in the salary and benefit cost. But it's 25% or more employees. So there's something that doesn't compute in my mind there. Can you?
Sure. Yeah, we have a pretty robust clerical staff in our court system, and in general, they top out at a lower rate of pay than corrections officers. So it's the average rate of pay is the difference there.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 7, labor agreement, United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agriculture Implement Workers.
Yes, this is a request to approve a 5-year labor agreement for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 23 between the County of Kent and UAW Local 2600, representing the employees at several county departments. The negotiating committee recommends approval of a 5-year labor agreement with Local 2600, covering 368 employees. Following is a summary of the major financial elements of the proposed new agreement. Wages will increase 2.5% annually in 2019, 2021, and 2% in 2022 and 23. Either party may reopen the agreement in 2021 for negotiating of 2022 and 23 wages. The maximum retiree health care stipend will increase to $400 to employees who retire in 2019 or after. The total 5-year increase to salary and benefit cost is estimated to be $8.021 million.
All right, do I have a motion for this?
I'll move it.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Vaughn, seconded by Commissioner Korndike. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes. On to item 8, Commissioner Miscellaneous. Do we have any miscellaneous today? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair. Wayman, just a question for you. I wasn't going to ask the same question over for all 4 of these agreements. They're 5-year agreements. I know you can reopen them for wages in the 2 years out. Is this a trend that we're seeing, or is this going to be the way it's going to be? And can you kind of explain to me how that reopening of the contract for wages is going to work?
Well,
A lot can happen.
a lot could happen. We don't know what the economy is going to tell us, and we just don't know. So that's the reason for it primarily. We don't know what the future is going to hold. But I think we have a good relationship with our unions. I think that is evidenced here. We worked through the team, Amy Rolston, the team really did a solid job in securing that relationship again. So my hope is that we won't end up with a situation where we'll have to reopen, but you never know. It could happen, and we'll, of course, have to deal with it. But we think that we've done enough due diligence now to ward off the need to go back and renegotiate, but we never know.
Any other Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair. It's a couple weeks yet before our next meeting, and there's an awful lot going on in Lansing and Lame Duck, and it'll be almost over by the time we meet again. Would it be possible, I apologize for not having given a heads up about this, but is there anything someone, maybe Wayman, could summarize about what our priorities are for that over the next few weeks? What are the things we're actively engaged in Lame Duck?
Well, I can tell you that, one, we are definitely focused on remedying the indigent defense issue. We want to make sure that we're at the table on that issue. There are other items that we know about from dealing with the PSAP, the PSAP issue that we've been dealing with, 911. We hope to see some movement on that issue. That's still on the table, 911. Of course, we are hoping to see that the state will support our request to fund the LREs, ISF, the funding that we think that they're going to need. So that's on the table. We're meeting with them next week. I'm planning on being down there on the 4th, I think it is, next week, Jim, to talk through those. We have a long list of items that we presented a couple of weeks ago. So all those issues are on the table, but I think the primary issue for the county right now is the ISF. There's $2 million that they're going to need to fund that program. That's probably the top one for us. I think that, we're hoping that we can get some relief on that issue.
And I'll just add that we had our last meeting a couple of weeks ago with our breakfast with legislators, and we did kind of walk through that. I think we need to be somewhat realistic, and there's only 12 session days left on the books. So thankfully, Wayman's going to go next week and kind of reiterate some of those priorities, and there is a supplemental coming through, we've heard, so we'll kind of see where some of our funding requests come in, and hopefully, I think we made a pretty strong case 2 weeks ago for that, so I think, I'm sure Wayman would be happy to kind of give us all an update after his meeting next week on how things go and some realistic expectations before the end of the year, so.
And perhaps let us know if there's anything we should be doing.
Right.
We'll let you know.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.